I love listening to Pet Talk Radio. I do. I really love it. It's cool.
Oh, we all love it. Now, this next story is not just for Victorian dog owners, it's for dog owners everywhere and ultimately the community as well. Now, the outcomes of several breed-specific law cases in Victoria where dogs have been seized because they might have fitted the look of some prohibited species, some have been put to sleep, unfortunately, but very recently, as you've heard here, there have been a couple of wins. Now, a lot of that is to do with an organisation called BORP. Weird name, but it's Barristers Animal Welfare Panel. This is a voluntary group made up of lawyers and other people who are doing really cool things right at the pointy end of this issue. And we thought it would be a good time to get in touch with someone from BORP to tell us exactly what it is they're doing and the success that they're having.
And on the line we have Anastasia Smetanka.
Anastasia, thanks for joining us. It's very exciting times in Victoria at the moment. There have been a couple of wins. Just to bring us up to speed, what is BORP all about and how are you managing to change the tide in Victoria's crazy BSL laws?
BORP is a group of barristers who have come together nationally around Australia to combat animal welfare laws which don't act in the interests of animals and to challenge those sorts of laws. Our aim is strategic, big-scale litigation, so test cases which will challenge the laws out there which do exist. And we all came together about 5 years ago now, but we are national. And in terms of BSL, we got involved about 2 years ago when the legislation was first introduced, and we've been involved since then in the high-end cases, I guess, the ones which really challenge that law in Victoria, challenge the interpretation of it, and also the ones where a dog's on death row and about to be put down.
It's been horrendous. I mean, we've been following this case and talking to some of the people involved, dogs on trial, a lot of the people who are working at ground level. It does seem that the tide is turning somewhat, but this has been huge. In the 2 years, I guess, that you've been involved, how much has it been costing the taxpayers alone fighting cases in court for bad cases that are ultimately overturned?
That's the most important question, because what's happened is the state government has introduced these laws about animal management, and then they've basically dumped complete responsibility for enforcement upon councils. So it's councils that are bearing the cost of these cases, and they're bearing them at a number of levels. So in Victoria, the primary tribunal that decides these cases, it all happens at the Victorian Administrative Tribunal or VCAT, but then a lot of the time cases get appealed on a point of law to the Supreme Court. So if a council loses, they often incur both parties' costs. So off the top of my head, there's been cases that have cost up to sort of $100,000 that have been litigated. There's been cases that have settled that have reportedly cost even more than that. So we are talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars here. And as I said, it's councils who have really been dumped with the cost of paying for this, and the state government's completely ignored their responsibility.
Quite extraordinary, really, given that the councils are trying to struggle with the amounts of money that they get, and ultimately it does come from we taxpayers anyway. So what's the best way forward from BORP's point of view?
The best way forward is to get rid of this law. In terms of a legal sense, it's completely unworkable, because this law basically asks council officers to identify a breed or 5 breeds of dogs, and in Victoria, it's American Pit Bull Terriers that we're talking about, dogs that you can't really identify because there's no DNA test. Physically, it's very hard to visually accurately identify any dog, and studies in the US and the UK have shown that. The law is basically unenforceable because it's asking council officers to do something that's impossible to do. And as a recent Supreme Court case has clarified, there's always going to be some sort of doubt in this identification. These cases are always going to be challenged, and the best way is to get rid of these breed-specific laws, because studies have shown that targeting the breed doesn't reduce the incidence of bites, and introducing some sort of comprehensive model that deals with dangerous dogs, such as what they've introduced in Calgary.
Yes, we've been following the Calgary model for a little while now too. And I guess I know that you've got to dash, but just as a last point,
that's okay.
We're hearing rumours, well, not so much rumours, Victorian ministers are saying they want to toughen laws and make big dogs, buffy heads, guilty, and put the onus on owners to prove that they're innocent. And these are dogs that have not done anything wrong. I mean, That seems to be an even further backward step, if that's possible, for Victorian laws.
It's a backward step. The Victorian government is completely out of sync with what every single country and also state are doing internationally, which is repealing BSL. Now, there is no credible statistics of breed-specific legislation works. I mean, the peak veterinary body in Australia is against it. What more evidence do you need that it's a bad law, it doesn't work? And what it is it's politics. It's the government posturing and trying to show the people that they are dealing with a problem, and that problem is dangerous dogs. But people need to disassociate in their minds breeds of dogs with, I guess, bites, because studies have actually shown that dogs such as the Jack Russell Terrier are responsible for a large amount of bites. And as we know, Jack Russells are lovely dogs, and American Pit-Bull Terriers can also be lovely dogs, and it depends on how people treat these dogs. And in the end, if we want to deal with dangerous dogs, we need to bring the model that the statistics, the evidence, the vets support, and that's not breed-specific legislation. So that the proposed amendments, they're completely Neanderthal amendments. They're not supported by any vet science. They're not supported by the people, and they shouldn't be brought in.
Fantastic. Anastasia, do you have a dog yourself, by the way?
I do.
What kind?
I have a Whippet cross, I have a Jack Russell Terrier cross, and I have a Chihuahua cross.
Oh, potential little biters there. I'm joking.
Exactly right. Well, the bed's very warm at night with all three of them.
Fantastic. Well, the aim of the game is to make sure that all families have their bed warmers at home, no matter what size they are. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll put details of the Barristers Animal Welfare Panel website on our site as well, and encourage people to go along and join up with you too.
Thank you, Kay and Brian, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
That was Anastasia Smetanka from the BORP.
Barristers Animal Welfare Panel.
Thank you very much. So what did you think of that? At least there's some people out there speaking some sense, which is good, and it's not just all
well,
legal
I think it's
gobbledygook.
quite impressive for everyone to hear a lawyer actually speak about how difficult those laws are to police, you know. So, yep. I know governments have to bring in things very quickly because people demand a solution immediately, but you know, that isn't really a solution.
Well, once it's been proven that the law isn't working, then the sensible thing to do is get rid of it.
And I think it's really important, though, that if community has a certain expectation that if you have a counter view, like BORP does, and obviously everyone who's fighting BSL does, they've got to sell their point of view. And I think that's where Pet Talk Radio is really doing a great job. You guys are doing a great job, and that is making sure that the community does understand that BSL is not really the solution, and there's got to be a more multi-pronged approach to fix up the issues that we have in the community. But if community says this is what we want, there's really no going against it, because that's what politicians have to do. They have to act on what community expectations are.
Sometimes they misread the community, though, and I think if anyone is interested in this, there's actually a global protest against BSL laws that's happening all across Australia, all across the world, in fact, on the 13th of July. So that's coming up very soon.
And you're speaking at it.
Yes, sorry about that,
It was a little plug she just slipped in there. You know, she wanted you to say that.
Martin Place, midday on the 13th of July. Or if you want to take part, there's going to be a little march before that from Hyde Park to Martin Place. And lots of other people much more interesting than me talking.
Oh, no, okay. Will we be able to hear your speech? Can you record it for us to listen? Those of us who can't be there?
But I will.
Oh.